I live in Southeast Washington on Capitol Hill. Well, I really like the Tune Inn a lot. So the Tune Inn is right around the corner from my house. And they, the food is not the best for me, but I like their food. And then the other that I like to go to a lot is the Argonaut. Argonaut with their fish tacos and their sweet potato fries is terrific. And then when we're spending a little bit more money, we go to Toscana. And Toscana is on 2nd and F over by Union Station, and it's amazing Italian food. So those are 3 of my favorite places, but I often start off at the Tune Inn.
Nice. Well done sticking to Ward 6. I noticed that those are all local places.
I need to get out from Ward 6. That's a good point. I need to keep moving out of Ward 6. Yes, good point. Well, obviously the Nats.
All right.
I mean, I love the Nats.
Fair enough. I didn't know you might be a United fan.
I was very upset when they, when they traded Michael Morse, but it never wavered for a minute. They just broke my heart briefly, and they could use him now too. Well, first off is that I'm the only one running against the status quo. And I think I made that clear when, I remember when the then chair Brown, he, with the SUV, he ordered one that we're still paying for and then ordered another. And so because I had oversight of Department of Public Works and Transportation, it fell to me to see what happened. And I investigated that and wrote and put out a report that was highly critical of the chair. And the rest of my colleagues kind of scurried for cover and really didn't speak up at all. And so I think that I've already have dealt with the council that, I proposed, at least let us know in campaign finance. I proposed an amendment to the ethics bill that said, at least tell us who owns all these limited liability corporations who are funding our campaigns. Make them put their name on it. And my colleagues said, no, we don't, they all voted against it, saying, no, we don't want to do that. So I'm already on a council that is the status quo, that does not stand up for integrity in government. And I don't see any of that changing, except we have added some new council members that I feel like have brought in some sunshine, like David Grasso and Kenyon McDuffie. I think that they both ran as reform candidates, and I've certainly enjoyed having them on the council. And I think that it's going to really be up to the voters to continue to have an elected government that reflects their highest aspirations. I will be exactly as I am today. That is, I use public transit. I use, services like Car2Go. I use Uber. I ride my bike. I walk. I hitch a ride with a friend or with a staffer, whatever it is, I'll be multimodal. And our city, part of what makes our city great is you have all these transit options. And so why limit yourself to any one? And so I'll continue to use those transit options. I'll ride a bike as mayor, I'll walk as mayor, and I'll also continue to use, public transit as mayor. I have a long background in social justice. I came here as a social worker, and I've always, part of who I am is to help the least of us, to be sure that, children are safe and that families do well. But also, I really do believe that the worst public transit in the city is around the folks that make the less. That's in Ward 7 and 8. And what I did during that 6 months that I oversaw transportation, I moved the circulator line. Did not exist east of the river. I moved it from Ward 6 over to east of the river. And that's the first time that they got high quality premium bus transit that was certainly evident west of the river, but not east of the river. I've got a track record also of whether it be around Parks, Rec, those kinds of things, that time that I oversaw Parks and Rec, that I was able to pump up funding as well in some underfunded rec areas. I think that there's no question that we need transit equity so people can get to jobs. We need affordable housing. one of the first things I did as ANC commissioner was fight for the Ellen Wilson project that people wanted out of their neighborhood. Now we've got affordable housing in a very expensive area for years to come. And so I believe it can be done. I've done it, and we can do it in Ward 7, 8, 5, elsewhere in the city. And it's about equity, and that is certainly how I've governed. Well, when I oversaw human services, I shepherded into the city along with the mayor then Fenty, something called Housing First. And that's where we took the most chronically homeless folks that nonprofits, other groups had never been able to get housed, and we got almost 1,000 people into apartments that are the folks that you saw under the bridges in the woods that were living on the margins, had never been able to be housed. And 90% of them are still in the apartments we put them in 4 or 5 years ago. It's very successful. Only the council expanded that with our recent budget to help the seniors that we're finding in our low barrier shelters, CCNV and elsewhere. But this administration has not substantially expanded that. I will, I think we substantially continue to expand Housing First. We have to have rapid rehousing for folks. We have to have certainly housing support. When someone, so many of us are just one paycheck away from being able, from losing our housing, that the emergency support that we can give to keep people in their housing is really critical instead of waiting until they've lost their housing. I think we can do that, and then we can do a lot more around building permanent, affordable housing like we did on Capitol Hill with Ellen Wilson, and that we can do elsewhere in the city. And the last thing I believe that we do is we're going to have to expand what we call the HPAP program, which helps people get a down payment. That they may be able to generate enough income to buy a place, but to get 10 to 20% down payment is almost impossible sometimes. So the city has a program to help with that. And I think we can substantially expand that. So no matter where you are in the spectrum, homeless or ready to purchase a house, that I believe that the city can have the tools to make that work. And ending homelessness is a slogan, but in terms of being part of actually doing it is, we've got a lot of work to do. We've got to help our families at DC General, but I believe we can do it. Absolutely. What we'll do is we will build a public transit system for the 21st century so that everyone in the city has low-cost transit, that as people move into the city and as people age in place, they're not as able to be car dependent as they have been in the past. And so it's not just a streetcar. It's not just a premium brand bus like the Circulator, but there'll be a next generation of buses. They'll be smaller so we can go into neighborhoods so that people can get on shuttles, whatever you want to call them, jitneys, but that we take public transit to a different level, and that we continue. One of the things that we did in the city is that we did bike share. Bike share program, most successful bike share program in the nation, and the reason that it works also is with the IT overlay, that you know where they are, and it's managed that way, and that it's now a new option in our public transit system. So what my signature will be is that we have a city that has a world-class transit system that works for no matter where you are on the economic spectrum, on the age spectrum, that young people, they don't have to wait to get their driver's license. They will have a public transit system that serves them to get to school, to get to an after-school job, to get to a summer job, and that they'll be able to participate in all the great things in the city, and you won't be isolated because of transportation. So that will be a signature, that if I'm elected, that will be something that will live for the ages. Well, what I've announced is that I believe that we can have a youth engagement initiative from the mayor that engages public sector and private sector that has the result of cutting the number of crimes committed by teenagers in half in 2 years. One way to do that is to also decriminalize small amounts of marijuana. Marijuana, we found out, it's not going away. It's here. And are we willing to risk someone's future employment chances? And are we willing also to have them knocked out of school for periods of time for small amounts of marijuana? I think that the public cost of some of these smaller crimes, like having a small amount of marijuana, in terms of what that public cost is versus them having that, is far outweighed by keeping them in school, not having a record. You know, if you have a drug record, you basically can't get a job on a construction site. We've got 1/3 of the commercial development going on in America is happening in DC. And if you can't get on a construction site because you've got a marijuana charge, that's a problem. And so, again, the public good is not outweighed by putting young people in jail for small amounts of marijuana. So that's part of a whole spectrum of how we can cut the number of, think about it, the number of young people that will be affected if they don't get caught up into the criminal system, and the number of people that are affected by having half the number of crimes committed, so fewer victims. It'll be transformative. And so that is only one piece of a comprehensive way that we engage young people, also by after-school jobs, other things, so you don't have to knock someone on the head to get some weekend money. You can have a job. So we can transform the city with the Youth Engagement Initiative that involves everyone, including WAMU. I don't know how many teenage after-school interns you have, but you would be part of the answer as well. Teach someone to be the next reporter for WAMU. Well, I think that one of the strengths I bring is that I have an ability to do community engagement in a way around tough decisions. And I think that there's been a lot of criticism of Chancellor Henderson of not doing the full amount of engagement around closure of schools and about changing the education system. And I believe I can help with that as the head of the city, that we can involve the public who is affected. It's not just the parents of where they send their children, but it's the neighborhoods that lose their neighborhood schools, especially at the elementary school level. What you want, what the gold standard is that you move into a neighborhood, you're a young person, someone says, you know what, you have kids or you're thinking about having kids, you just moved to the right place, you're going to love your neighborhood school. We've got that now in Ward 6. We didn't have that when I first started out into elected office. We've got it now. And we've seen that it's transformative. And I will lead, you know, that's not all on Chancellor Henderson, that's not all on the charter schools or anyone else. That'll be on me. And so Chancellor Henderson will have not just a partner, but a leader that knows how to transform a school system. I've done it in Ward 6, we can do it citywide. You know, in terms of what it means to close schools, my goal is that there be a great elementary school that you can attend as a matter of right in every neighborhood. So if the charter schools will not provide matter of right attendance, then we're going to reinvent that school until we get it right, so that every family can attend a school in walking distance to their home. And that's it. That is the goal. That is going to happen. Now, in terms of high schools and middle schools, there's a huge role that I've seen with parents choosing to go out of their neighborhoods if they need to meet the needs and particular interests of their child. But at the elementary school level, if Chancellor Henderson says we're going to close more elementary schools in neighborhoods that are already underserved by elementary schools, that's not going to happen. What we'll do is we'll continue to reinvent those schools until we get it right. And we'll work with the parents that live around that school or are looking to become parents around that school and ask them, what do you need? What do you want for a school to send your child? Challenge us. I did that in Ward 6, and now 10 of our elementary schools have waiting lists, and we're adding 2 or 3 more elementary schools. I've done it, and let me tell you about Ward 6. There's more public housing in Ward 6 than any other ward in the city. So you can't say just because the income has changed. We have economically integrated schools. That's the gold standard. We can do that in 7 and 8, and if Chancellor Henderson says, look, we've got to do something new because these schools are failing, I'm not going to close. What we'll do is reinvent at the elementary school level. Middle and high school, you know, that's a place where parents are more mobile around school choice. And that's, you know, we can look at that.